and managers can create a guide, start to backfill. There could be peer learning, a lot of advantages to doing it that way. Um, and that pretty much sums up, sorry, what I have at the bottom there, right, is creating that continuity, allowing us to be able to evaluate what good roles are, what good SLP managers, or right, what are they doing that we can translate for other SLP managers, really creating internal career progression and exposure. And so phase one, what we started with was our framework is against plan, source, make, deliver. And so phase one is planning, procurement, and manufacturing. Where we're looking to take the SLP program next year in September 25 launch is to introduce that logistics component, and really where that definitely more heavily comes in for next phase two is really that we're introducing the distribution center and allowing SLPs to take on that ops supervisor role there. So I will pause there if there's any questions at this point.
So, Chelsea, thank you for the overview. Very helpful. Great to see the tweaks and changes that we've made over the years as we've gotten that feedback, right? I'm an example of someone who, was an HRSLP very, very early on. There wasn't a, clearly defined expectation as to whether I was doing projects or a true role, right? So I love this maturity to, hey, let's focus on roles that really add value to the organization. And so just so I understand, a site would have, for instance, an SLP, as you said, like for 2 years. So there's there's stability with that role. The individual would rotate out every 8 months, but that role essentially would be, firmed up for 2 years, for instance.
Correct. And I think this provides a better visual for what that looks like, right? So they can plan for that headcount for 2 years. Yeah. So every team can say, okay, I have a headcount here working on this category or this part of the business for 2 years, even though it's three different people.
Nice. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Any other questions?
Wait, can you help me? What is this at? What is this telling us?
I'm sorry, Tracy, what'd you say?
Can you walk this slide? I haven't seen it.
Yes, yes. So this was for rotation planning. So we are hiring SLPs in threes to be able to achieve that model, right? So for them to be able to backfill one another and for them to go through those 3 8-month rotations. This was a way to just really display what our head count is going to look like and how we can continue the evolution of backfilling. So I would say with this past class, so for the past maybe year and a half, we've been piloting some of those roles, really trying to get down, right? These are the right roles. This is where we want to continue to backfill and grow SLPs to help them build that fundamental functional knowledge. And so you'll see here that we still have a class that came from that old framework that we've tried to transition into the newer framework. And that class is coming off next August. And so that's a focus area that I wanted to share with you guys, right? Because that's headcount that we need to plan to absorb in the business that we didn't necessarily have a clear plan for when they necessarily came in. So other folks that are starting to come into the business, we've looked at headcount where we have our biggest areas of opportunity for continual progression for them to maybe sit in a role for 2 years, move on into a different role laterally or vertically into the organization. And so but really trying to plan also where we're trying to drive that talent. And so that will be another slide. But this just really demonstrates our headcount, where they're going, what those rotational experiences are like. So Teresa, you had Alex, Evan, all of them. They're from this group right here, which will eventually, in that September 2025 class, we are going to scale back some of that headcount and it will be 6 dedicated headcounts.
We have 18 will be in flight. What's the from
So
to?
Yeah, so I don't know if you can see. So timeline wise, that's 2027. So I have another headcount projection slide, which I can share with you. It's just a work in progress for the EMEA side. Right now, we're at 15 in the US, and whether or not we decide to scale the program or start to scale back, scale forward or back, that will determine headcount in the future.
But we'll have how many coming off in September that get absorbed?
So next August, they will have 7 SLPs that need to be absorbed.
Okay.
Yeah. And then in the future, it will typically be 6, right? So it will be however many in threes that we hire.
So Chelsea, for those, 7, we're saying next August, when are we going to get those pulses to say, hey, we've got upcoming SLPs that are going to be looking for full-time roles in the org? Because I know historically we've done it when it could also be considered too late for operations. Like maybe I've already hired a role or I've made an offer, whereas if I had known 3 months ahead of time, I could have, made arrangements to keep something open for 3 months or have a workaround knowing that somebody could come into it. So I feel like there needs to be a continual pulse or reminder, hey, remember, we've got people come in, ready in 6 months, ready in 4 months, whatever it is, so that there's more visibility so we can have full-time opportunities for graduating SLPs.
Yes. So I think part of it is starting the conversation now, Erica. And I think one of the challenges in the past was we really couldn't predict even what type of experiences that they would have. And then we didn't know anything that was going to come up in the business. So now I would say probably around January, February timeline, when they've had some time to be in this last rotational role, they'll have a good idea of what part of the business they want to go into, right? And I think we could create and see some opportunities there. I'm already having those conversations to frame up and say, hey, what are you looking at, right? And I think some of them are still a little undecided and looking for that next rotational experience. So they'll have a little bit more exposure than some SLPs in the past, like where they've had right across planning, procurement, manufacturing, or distribution, as opposed to some of them who only had like materials planning, then they did like a lean improvement, a lean engineer role, and then they wanted to go and be in procurement, but they never had experience before and they didn't really have any of the baseline to help them transition there.
Okay.
So I think around that January, probably more realistic February timeline, we'll have more conversations around where they're going to start going.
Yeah, and Erica, that's a good comment. I mean, it also gets back to in terms of the opportunity that you talked about, Erica, for shares. Hey, that the action that we're trying to do is integrate Chelsea into these talent conversations, every quarter so we can stay on top of it and have good active dialogue across this leadership team around the talent and thinking about those roles and opportunities. So good call out. Hey, Chelsea,
Hey,
Sorry.
just Matt, you go.
Just curious, as they're kind of rolling off one rotation into the next, is it in that order, Chelsea, from planning, procurement to manufacturing? Or are we giving them the option? Are we kind of partnering with them to see what they like, don't like, and then base the openings, right, and availability to fill those positions, to fill those next assignments?
Are you talking for outplacement or are you talking about for SLP placement?
For SLP placement, as they're rotating, I'm looking at the plan, source, and make.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just curious if there's an approach, right, or if they're going to be essentially pulse for procurement, pulse for manufacturing, or if we're saying, hey, you came off planning, so you got to go right to procurement or you got to go right to manufacturing.
Yeah. So, um, for, I mean, ideally, right, from an internship, if they've had an internship experience before, say in planning or manufacturing, how I've been placing them for that first rotation is within an area where they've already had experience before to help with the transition of stepping into the full-time role, stepping into a new company. So it helps that transition a little bit easier. Ideally, right, they would have been with Stanley Black & Decker before, and it will make the transition a little bit easier. But so that's how I've been kickstarting that first one because it makes it a little bit easier for the second or third. As far as like whether they go distribution or manufacturing. Part of that is I'm asking in the interview questions, right? Like, what is it that you're interested in? What type of classes are you taking? And I think in general, right, some of them know I'm really interested in manufacturing versus logistics route. And so they'll have some say, right, about what those experiences are like. As far as the specific role, like Dallas said, these are the two roles that we have within supply planning, demand or supply. I'm leaving it up to the team. I'm not, to place them where they think, right? I can give my feedback about who I think is a stronger performer, maybe one over the other based on the workload that's there. But it's ultimately up to the team to decide how they want to
Got it. That makes sense.
put
Okay.
them in the business. And so I think something that's been really challenging from a recruitment standpoint has been how big our footprint is and where we want to drive that talent. And so I've been getting really clear in the interview process of these are the areas where you could eventually end up, right? So Towson being one of our main hub for corporate roles, but then there also being opportunity within manufacturing sites and trying to at least solidify that area. And what I realized, I apologize. Oh no, North Lake is on here. Okay, I was going to say is North Lake, right, is now that we're introducing some of those distribution centers, is that there is opportunity across the board, but this is where we need to reasonably plan for when they're coming out post-program.
Right. And so for August of 2025, we have 7 coming off of rotation that will need to find full-time homes.
Yes.
And as a result, hitting the 4 walls of the locations versus the program.
So I think for this next class, it'll be a little different. And I should have put on here that, right, this is the goals that we're communicating for that 2025 to 2027 class, right? So this is where we can start to pivot. And this is what I'm starting to communicate now in recruitment. But for next year, they were hired at a time where we did have remote roles. We had some open offices or sites where we no longer have sites or offices. So I do think that some of them are a retention risk, and maybe we won't be able to retain them right by the end of outplacement. And so trying to find where we can retain all of them in a smart way. So I think we have some more, and I actually wrote out that on one of the slides. So I'll showcase that. This is that class that's graduating.
Hey, Chelsea.
and-
Chelsea,
Yes.
just real quick for that previous slide, I would just make sure, just to expand scope, the demand and supply planner, the planning function, that location really should be Towson, Valley City, or New Britain, Connecticut. Our teams are spread across those 3 hubs. Just as we talk about making sure we have a placement that works also for their personal, if we have more expanse, right? Ohio, Maryland, or Connecticut, that may help us. So if this is a slide you're showing with the team, I would put it for those 3 hubs tied to planning.
So that's originally what we had, was more so Towson or Valley City.
Yeah, Chelsea, let me take it.
Okay.
I would say, Dallas, you're right. Our current practices are around those 3 hubs. This was more, I'll call it my intentional input across these core functions to start to bring in a more focused clarity to the SLPs that Towson should become where your nucleus is. So let's you and I connect offline with the broader group, because this is more my direction to Chelsea around Towson being, they call it primary, and being very articulate to the SLPs so that they're not thinking that there's a variety of different kind of options, although that potentially there might be a scenario where somebody's personal situation still meets our criteria around a hub environment. And I'm having the same kind of Kadir's out there, but I'm having the same conversation with Kadir on the procurement piece.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Chelsea, go back to the other slide, please.
Sure.
I have a question. How do we decide what manufacturing or DCs, are gonna go?
For the SLP or for outplacement?
For the SLP.
For SLP, that was decided with Steve Eaglin. So we have Northlake by Steve Eaglin's direction. And for manufacturing, we're selecting Jackson for that SLP. And we also had Martin. So it was with input from the business
Okay,
leaders.
thank you.
So, and part of it, right, I think we've been testing some sites to see really where we can groom the best talent, and then really being able to communicate to them, like, even if you're going to Jackson, you may not end up there, right, post-program. Now, there's other opportunities at different sites, even though you're getting the SLP experience there. So this is the class that's graduating next, it's early August, so let's say July, August timeline. Some of them, they're going into their final rotation this early December. Andrew, a lot of them are from Michigan State. We had a decent presence from there, which will still have some Michigan, but what we found is a lot of them want to be back in that area, right? So I've definitely scaled back recruitment from Michigan State in the past for this recruitment season. So we have Andrew, Evan, and Noah all coming to Towson for their final rotation. Andrew is somebody that I think would really like to end up in the Valley City or Michigan area due to personal reasons. Evan is much more open and I think still looking to explore, right, what procurement or planning looks like. He was also at Fort Mill Distribution and really liked it there and could see himself going back, right? So some of them are a little bit more flexible than others. Noah, I'm not too sure yet. I know that he is probably going to be looking for a corporate environment and type role, so probably something in the Towson or Valley City area. Tom Priya and Ian are two SLPs where we recently just changed and we're launching their third rotation to do that ops supervisor role at Farmers Brands Manufacturing, which they haven't done this before, so they'll be the first to inherit SLPs in that area. Tom Priya is somebody that wants to end up in Arizona, right? And so part of the decision to drive them to those sites was not only one, the site was excited to have them and was able to commit to that ops supervisor role, but also I do see them ending up in the Dallas area. And so for retention mitigation, I just wanted to give them an opportunity to see what the site and the areas are like down there, hoping that we can find a home for them post-program, whether it be in ops or a different part of the business. Valley City is going to inherit Bavine and Alex for their next rotations. I know that Bavine probably is from the New Jersey area, will probably want to end up back in the Northeast somewhere, likely in Towson, which is closer to home. And then Alex is from the Midwest, and so he would like to be somewhere close to Nebraska. And so I mentioned Tustin, Kansas, and that was a site where, he was open to going as well. All of them will have to, so part of it will be trying to find roles, right, where we can actually retain some of them. Part of it will be how much, right, how well they've performed, right, and what lengths we're willing to go to also retain them.
And Chelsea, you said some of that is just because of the environment that they, came into where there was maybe some hybrid or remote expectations, and now I assume, with the incoming classes, etc., we should have more likelihood of maybe them staying where we want them to versus going on their own merry way, right?
Yes, exactly. It was just a different environment at the time. And then I also do think that Valley City, even though we're communicating it as a hub, there really isn't as many. One, the space can't accommodate the number, I think, of SLPs or like outplacement that we would maybe want, right? Where Towson or probably New Britain can. So that's another reason just to scale back, because I think a lot of them are comfortable with that Valley City office, but if there's no opportunities or even seats to sit there, it doesn't make sense to continue to recruit from that area for corporate. This is another class. So this is that last winter class that we'll be phasing out of. So Nikhil, Sabrina, and Brandon are the first class to really go through the new framework that we had launched. Again, I think we've been much more intentional about where we want that outplacement more recently. I think that they may still fall into that area of like, I think Brandon is probably really open. Sabrina's probably going to want to end up in the Ohio area, and Nikhil also somebody that would probably like to end up in Towson. This is the class that recently started this September, and so they are going through, they're at Martin for their SLP experience. They're going to be in planning in Towson and procurement Valley City. And so they're going through that full backfill as well. As far as outplacement, I haven't started to have those conversations yet with them. Any questions on the current class?
Hey, Chelsea, just as we go through, like, I kind of piggybacking off of what Erica brought up earlier. So,
Will, I think at least you froze for me.
Thought he was deep in thought for a
I was
second.
gonna say,
Okay, I wanted to make sure it wasn't just me. Will,
He
you froze.
Yeah, he froze.
okay.
Will, you back?
I'll try it now. Is there any open items on the SLPs in terms of assignments that you need help on or feedback from this group as we drive the ownership around this broader team of finding opportunities or their next assignments?
No, we
Okay.
are good in that on that front, and we're good on that front. I think probably moving forward. I think maybe for September 2025, right? It's solidifying what those right roles are, but we can give that some time, and I will pulse for feedback from this group. But I do have a few asks. Do I have more time, or am I
Yeah.
at time? Well, okay. Okay, so recruitment, I won't go too heavy into this slide. Really, the goals are competitive academic programs near SPD footprint where we can start to drive talent to stay there unless they're truly open. And we've put out surveys, right, of like really trying to assess openness to relocation at the sites of where we're trying to drive talent, meeting those profile requirements and where we have those alum connections and support. So I will send this out. We are recruiting for SLP and interns right now. We're pretty far along for SLPs. We have 3 confirmed hires and we're still hiring for 3 more. But we have a lot of different second round interviews already in progress. Part of the ask is if anybody's interested in interviewing or being part of the process, I am more than open to you coming on board to help with us. They're about 45-minute interviews for SLPs and they're 30-minute interviews for interns. We have a prepared list of questions that we ask all of the candidates to make sure that it's a consistent process despite the interviewer that might be asking them, and so that we're assessing them on the same competencies that we're looking for an equitable recruitment process.
Hey, Chelsea, just on that point, do you have any, I'm going to say slide, but it doesn't have to be, but like, go back one page, maybe it was there. Just like the steps of that, I'll call it recruitment process, like who's involved in what layers and like, how does it structure today?
yeah, and if I could just add real quick, Chelsea, if you could speak to maybe where we are recruiting, because I'm pinging on the side with Eric and Amanda, and there's a good commentary around could we do more recruiting in the Tennessee area since we have a large presence. So I was just curious on where we are maybe tackling those.
Yes. So I would say this is a hot topic of where we want our school recruitment strategy to be. So what I'll say is that we are recruiting right in the Tennessee area. I think we're still exploring some universities, and I have other slides that I didn't pull into this deck that really looked at proximity to our sites, what type of majors that they have there, how well academically they're performing, so that we can drive talent to those select outplacement locations, right? So that it makes sense for that footprint. Right now, we did introduce University of Arkansas where they actually have a lot of it's the #1 supply chain program, and a lot of those students are from the Texas area. So it could make sense for us from a Farmers Branch, Northlake, DC footprint standpoint. So we're starting to interview some of those students, which are more interested in that operations footprint. We're at Penn State with Steve Eaglin being our alumni connection there, and then Miami University in Oxford, Ohio, not University of Miami in Florida. That's another supply chain program that has support from Steve Katzvai, who is a former alum from the school. And so those two schools, I would say, are our primary recruitment strategy. I don't know if that really gives us the operations talent that we're looking for. I think those students are always looking for planning or procurement and to be in a corporate office. I am doing my best right through the recruitment panel, right, to understand when we're going to this school, how many students are we meeting, how many people are making it from round 1 to round 2 to round 3, where are they falling off? So at least we can have a pulse about where that strong talent is, or how many people we're moving forward with from offers from certain schools. Honestly, a lot of the students are great. I think we can find good talent probably anywhere at this level. It's going to really be what makes sense for footprint wise, but we'll have some metrics to put to recommendations, at least at the end of the recruitment season.
So Chelsea, I know I said this in the past about recruitment, but our probably 70% of our weight is on outplacement is Towson. We have no state school in Maryland as that driver. University of Maryland was always our driver historically, because you get easy placement. People who want to, if you have an in-state student that wants to stay in Maryland, Towson, Stanley Black & Decker was one of the biggest top 3 companies to work for. So if we need a connection, I have plenty of faculty that will support us. We used to support multiple events a year with that team, but whether it's University of Maryland or Towson, I think when we talk about outplacement and making sure it's aligned with that SLP, I think one of those 2 schools we need to target, because we are 70% of the corporate jobs sit in Towson.
Yes, and so we are always recruiting at University of Maryland. We didn't do anything specific global supply chain related at the school this year. What I will say is we didn't get as much interest for global supply chain as I think we thought we would. And I think part of it is that relocation aspect where they're not that keen on it. I think that if we go to any school and we target right students and we're promoting this on campus, we will start to build a brand and the experience, but it's really figuring out where do we want to build that brand and experience. And so I have no specific ties to any school or right, for me, it's where do you guys want to pull talent from that you want to work with, right? And where are they going to want to stay or be part of our company?
Yeah, so I think just to that point would be helpful to share out what's in the appendix around where do we play today, what has been our success about where we play today. And then to your point, certain universities we've decided, and I'm saying we, meaning the company, a few select of us on the Steerco have decided to play more in certain universities than others, right? And we've dropped out of being present in others with purpose. Doesn't mean that we can't add back others with purpose, but we would need the right level of leadership, sponsorship to be part of those, right? So using Dallas, your example, right? That's something that we would need to also think about taking on with all the other kind of programs and work that we have in the background if we feel like we're going to try to get an ROI out of investing kind of time, energy, and effort into, for example, recruitment at University of Maryland, right? So we might say that's something that we need to explore. And I don't think there's anything like blocking us from that, but we kind of got to think through what is our return on investment if we go down that kind of pathway, right? So long way of saying it'd be helpful, Chelsea, if you share out with this full group that appendix slide of here's where we play, here's what we've seen, educate kind of what we've been after over the last, call it year, 2 years in terms of our recruitment drive. And then, for the Americas operational leaders on the call, we can sit down and make this a focused topic, right, Will, and talk as a team and saying, are we doing too much too little? And is there somewhere else to kind of play that we're not today? And how do we want to go after that, right? Because my ask would be, it can't be you alone, Chelsea, going after those conversations. We have to be paired with the right business leadership to kind of take that on, right? Because we don't have enough resources to be spread everywhere and put our eggs in all these baskets. We want to be a little bit more dedicated and focused.
Yeah.
So we can take that on to help and support. Just getting back to the recruitment kind of process itself, and interview process specifically. How does that structure today? Like, I didn't really follow it exactly. Like, your team does the first wave on site, then you pull people back. Just if you could walk me through what that looks like in today's current climate.
Yeah. So a little bit of both. So once we're at the recruitment, and this will also, I think that we could evolve this. So I'll just put that there. But how it stands today is we've been going on campus. So I do have a TA partner who went on campus this year to Penn State, to Miami University. They had roundtable, they had a supply chain career fair, and then we set up on-campus interviews for the next day. So that handled round one. And it's slightly different for interns and SLPs. And I have this for SLP, so I can send it out too. But for SLP, so it goes that round one. Round two, we've updated it so that they're meeting with the business, and I'm sitting in on that round as well, so that I can meet them as the program manager. And then round three is them meeting with the COE program team, and then we're extending an offer. I've been tapping SLPs to help either with closing or leaders to help with closing, right? If we extend an offer to a candidate. For interns, we're keeping it at 2 rounds. So similarly, where we're on campus, do those on-campus interviews. If we're not on campus right after an event, there is still a virtual there's a virtual Zoom video interview, and that's really how the process has been managed if we're not on campus. And then they meet with the business and me, and then we move forward with an offer for intern. We haven't done a ton of intern recruitment.
Got it. Okay. And what opportunities, you said this is how it is today, and then you kind of went into it. What opportunities do you see?
So I think from a TA perspective, right? So one of our TA partners, they both come from consulting firms where consultants were the ones driving a lot of the interviews from stage one, right? And HR was more coordinating and facilitating that. So I think a future state goal is they would really like the business to be involved from round one to round two, round three, with making those decisions about who we're putting in through the program. It is much easier when you're on campus and you're getting it done and you're doing those marathon days because you can make decisions much quicker. And so we still want to move towards that framework. And the more we do that, the easier it is, honestly.
Are any of the SLP grads on campus with that team?
No. So it depends. So I've asked some SLP alum before to participate, and my goal is that with the SLPs in this current framework, as they're in that third rotation or graduating, I would like to tap them a lot more for recruitment efforts, especially if we're going to have alum, like SLP alum, going back to their school as alum. But because all of the SLPs in the past had such different experiences, they weren't necessarily, I would say, like our best ambassadors to go back and talk about the program. Also, a lot left.
Yeah, one recommendation just to think about is after the program, the top 3 ranked people for the call it 6 years when I came out of the program, the top 3 ranked people were asked for basically a 2-year stint after that to be the recruiting leaders. And they were actually the most brutal on the interviews because they didn't want someone to come in the program that wasn't going to perform to their standards. And it was a 2-year stint. You came out of the program, you had a full-time job, but you would travel to whatever universities and you kind of worked across those 3 people to do that. I think that we should leverage and give it to them as an opportunity, right? Hey, but you're one of our top ranked people. We want you to help us over the next 2 years recruit. I think that is the best person to interview for a student because it's someone young that just lived what they're looking into, and they are the most brutal when it comes to actually picking the best talent. Just a recommendation. It's something we used to do. I think it was successful. We've gotten away from that, but I do think it made impact when we were doing it.
I agree. I actually did tap Chloe recently, and so they had never interviewed before. So I started to tap them on. I picked who I thought was my highest performing, right? Like I want them to perform at that level. So I completely agree with you. And she was very critical in the interview process, right? And so I would like to tap them more. I did want to be conscious that they were starting their new roles as well, right? To be able to ask them to go and start recruiting. But in the future, and even this spring, I'd like to get them to that place.
Yeah, I think that thanks, Chelsea, also for sharing, right, the current process, right? And being action oriented here, I think there's, for the broader group, I think there's kind of at least two follow-ups so far that I think we as a team need to kind of talk about, come up with a perspective and a final recommendation, incorporating Dallas, what you just kind of mentioned as an example, and kind of share that back with you, Chelsea, and kind of, think about go forward, kind of if we want to change or pivot or augment any direction that we have. Mm-hmm. And I say that because one, having people part of that kind of interviewing process, whether it's kind of people who've just recently graduated or other business leaders that are taking on SLPs, for me, it comes back to time, energy, and effort in terms of where we're recruiting from, right? We can't be everywhere. We got to be somewhere. So I think it kind of goes hand in hand for me around the first point of where do we play? Where do we want to play? And should we play anywhere different? And then two, how do we want to be engaged in that from a business perspective? And, I think Will and I should take that as a follow-up to kind of, and with the rest of the team here to kind of get some input and make a recommendation, and then kind of talk back with you around, does that fit into the broader program? Does that break any rules or whatnot? And then we can kind of, take it from there. But I think, I just continue to reiterate to our group, right, that if we can probably make a number of different easy changes, it just, all of this comes back to more time, more work on someone's full-time job when there's a lot of other stuff kind of going on, right? Which still might be the right thing to do. We just got to be prepared to take that on as a business leadership group. So,
yeah.
Hopefully, we'll leave it with two. Hopefully, you're okay with those kind of two follow-ups at the moment.
Yeah, I would say another thing. So just as far as follow-ups that I'll put out here, and it won't take very long, but so the in-person matters, and just so as we're thinking through future state SLP roles, is that we're keeping that in mind. Internship assignments. So I'm planning for 2 planning interns in the Towson area this next summer. If I could get 2 managers and 2 assignments, that would be awesome. It doesn't have to be specific project just yet, just so I know where they're going to end up, so that it's not a surprise. Recruiting, if anybody's interested in interviewing, on-campus engagement most likely will happen in the springtime. And then I also would like to probably set up 1 to 2, maybe 3 virtual information sessions with different schools if anybody's interested in leading that. Future, that outplacement, so we'll pick up that conversation again in January, February, and as I have more information, I will keep this team updated and informed. Training input, so something that will evolve, we'll say next year and probably beyond, is right now the SLP training weeks have really been driven by the COE. And so I think there's going to be more opportunity in 2025 to really hone in on a functional training component. I will be leaning on the teams, right, to understand what makes the most sense, what type of functional or overall development focus areas do we leverage existing opportunities that are already, happening, like GSMX for procurement, and we plug them in there. So I'll be coming back to you guys on that if you have any recommendations based on the roles that they're in on your teams. And then I will send out a survey soon about feedback and inputs on the framework that we have out, just to make sure that we're still headed in the right direction.
Hey, Chelsea, real quick, from a retention standpoint, I think our biggest strategy on that is going to be the recruiting piece, making sure we're in the right areas. But is there anything like, we're investing all this time in training and development of their, soft skills, technical skills and whatnot. like, is there contractual agreements that they have like post SLP program when they get assigned to a location, like owing us X amount of time, or like, is there anything in place for that?
The only thing that's in place right now is from the relocation stipend, they have a 2-year clause.
Mhm.
So I would say that's also where we saw a lot of drop off from SLPs, right? That 2 to 3 mark, once they no longer owe back money to the organization, they
Hmm.
create.
Okay. Thanks.
Hey, Chelsea, when do you need to have the internship assignments back to you?
If you can get it to me by the end of this year, that would be great. I would like the team to know that I am hiring 2 folks, right? So we're in that intern process. It's planning for it. And if you don't want the interns, now would be the time to tell me.
And we've got a site in Hempstead, right near Towson. Are you looking for Towson specific or?
I am looking for Towson specific.
Okay, got it.
Where we decided, and I can send this over. I didn't realize it was going to also be ops focus. I can send over where we're looking to recruit. Right now, we're hiring 10 interns, 2 planning, I think 2 procurement, and 6 I'd like to drive to manufacturing. And so the sites that we selected from there with Steve Maddox was 2 in Heston, 2 in
Gallatin?
Shelbyville, and I don't think we selected Gallatin.
Martin.
Oh, you know what? I have it on the next
Jackson.
slide instead of guessing. Right here. So Kansas, Tennessee, yep, Gallatin or Shelbyville. And then Shelbyville did not actually put forward interest. This was Steve Maddox. So I have to go to the site, or if any of you want to work with me on that. And then he also put forward ELM. But I think it would be great to leverage Heston, Gallatin, and Shelbyville if possible.
Yeah, Chelsea, you and I can connect on Gallatin and Shelbyville. That would be a great idea.
Yeah. I think going back to the other page, I think the functional training piece, embedding kind of in what the organization's doing is a smart move for the future. But I think we all would admit freely that training's been one of our kind of underdeveloped areas in terms of what's out there. So I like putting it on the page of maybe there's like a week-long training or a couple multi-day training that we pick one day would be more relevant for the SLPs. But to have them sit in concert with folks in the business, I think is a smart, good move. But maybe we need to wait a little bit from our HR partners and kind of what is the listing from which we can choose? And I think they've been doing a lot of work to develop that and kind of put it all together on one page. But I like that it is a good thought on future development or future areas to improve.
Thank you. Thank you, Erica.
Anything else you wanted to?
Yeah, what else, Chelsea? Anything else? Is this the last one?
No, that's all I have, really for you guys. There's a quick overview. I have a million different slides that I could share with you guys if you're interested in certain topics or not. And we can dive into anything. I would just say my final comment about recruitment is that I don't want to go to a million schools, right? If we have a head count of 6, and so for us to even be at 3 schools is a lot. For 2 schools, 3 schools, it's a lot. And so if we're deciding to engage different universities, we need to understand the level of investment that we want to have there, because there are companies that go all in, and then it's time and effort from our teams. So that's my final comment.
No, great. No, Chelsea, super appreciative of you taking the time. Team, appreciative of you as well for taking your time today to invest in the program. Obviously, we have a couple follow-ups on maybe feedback on schools as well as the internship opportunities in Towson. So with that, Steve, any final comments from your end?
No, I same Chelsea. I think, thank you for walking the whole group through that. And it's just kind of I kind of did a little bit kind of on your behalf, and I'll say you do it better than I do. So I'll continue to thank you for that. But, reiterating what you just said, right? At the end of the day, we got to make the right choices and prioritize, right? Both on your team's behalf, as well as even what we take on as a business leadership group. So I think that, Will, for us, the two follow-ups that I think we got to kind of, use our next team meeting to kind of debate and discuss a little bit is the recruitment piece, right? Where are we recruiting? Why are we recruiting there? And make sure that everyone understands that. And if we want to change it, why and what value there is in that. Not to go, 100 miles wide, but let's go deep, and let's go deep in the right places. And then two, is there any recommendations that we'll have to kind of share back with Chelsea and the team around being more part of the selection and interviewing and kind of overall recruitment process, right? Whether that's on campus, whether that's interviews, et cetera. And how do we play a more active role within our teams as well as us as a leadership group? So I think those are two really good follow-ups that at least I wrote down and kind of took away, that we should probably, re-loop on here as we kind of continue to evolve and make progress here.
So, well, thank you guys for the time. I
Thanks
appreciate it.
all. Thanks for the time.
You team. Bye-bye.
Bye.